Is this the dagger?
Yo, welcome back to another episode of the On the Ball Show here on the Right Way Sports Network YouTube channel. I'm your host, Pranav and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Justin. Justin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's pretty sad because it's your last show, so it's going to be upsetting to see that. But, hey, it's the last dance, so I'm excited to talk some hoops.
For sure, yeah, it is my last show if you guys are tuned in, but make sure the show is still going to stay. We'll have Will Lachlan back, I believe, and then a couple other new hosts. So make sure to still support the On the Ball Show every Friday. And then I'll be on the TWSN show to make sure to go check out all of our shows weekly on the Right Way Sports Network YouTube channel. And make sure to go download our app. But with that being said, let's get right into it because we have a lot to talk about this week. There's so much action going on. I mean, the Suns clinched the Western Conference Finals, and they have a berth to the NBA Finals, and the Eastern Conference Finals still isn't over, but the Bucks do have a 3-2 series lead. Let's start out with the Eastern Conference because that's a conference that's still going on. We're yet to see the winner of that conference. Who do you believe, with Trae Young expected to come back in Game 6 and Giannis's health still being into question? The Bucks do have the series lead, but who do you think will win the Eastern Conference and why?
This is really tough for me with Giannis out because with Giannis there, the defense is so much more stable. In my opinion, the best defender in the league. If not, he's at least top 2 or 3. But regardless, he's a generational defensive talent and overall a generational talent. Offensively, although he might not be scoring in the flashiest ways, he scores at such a high rate and such an efficient rate. Sometimes he's at the top of the key shooting threes, but for the most part, he's down low and no one can really stop him at all. And in the Hawks series, he looked great. And in the entire playoffs, for the most part, outside of a few outliers, he's looked great as a whole. But with Giannis out, it's really coming down to all these guys stepping up. And last night, Bucks won Game 5, obviously without Trae Young on the Hawks. But a lot of guys stepped up. Brook Lopez, 33 points. He went off to get the Bucks one win away from the NBA Finals. And when he was used in the post more, it looked a lot more effective. He still is able to get down low in the post, but he's not able to do that with Giannis. So it seems like he's being misutilized there, but at the same time, now without Giannis, he's able to be in his best situation. And then other guys like Bobby Portis stepped up. Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday were amazing, and they were exactly what you expect out of them to be. But I don't know if they could sustain that because the Bucks last night pretty much played a perfect game, and it's hard to maintain that for the rest of the series. And especially in Atlanta, I think the Hawks, with Trae Young coming back most likely, I think they're going to be able to get Game 6. But Game 7 is where it gets tough. They're going to be in Milwaukee. I think Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday is a good pairing to go up against the Hawks. And they also have guys like Brook Lopez, who's being utilized in a great way without Giannis. Bobby Portis went off. Other guys like Pat Connaughton. It's going to be really tough for both sides, even with the Hawks being fully healthy. But if I had to lean one side, I would go the Hawks in 7 games. And now it's still close because I think the Bucks are still a great team without Giannis. But again, that defensive load that he had, it was just so much. And no one could slow down Trae Young. And with Giannis not being able to hold down the fort in the paint, that's going to be a really tough time for the Bucks on defense. And the Hawks, especially in the pick and roll, are going to be able to feast on the Bucks. So it's really tough. It could still go either way without Giannis. But I'm going to go Hawks in 7 games for them to advance to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I want to say something boring, like, let's see about the health of Giannis and then go from there. No, I'm just going to pick the Hawks anyway because even if Giannis comes back, I believe he will be compromised. He won't be at 100%, and he won't be able to dominate the same way he typically does. He might have minutes restrictions as well. And I see the Hawks pretty easily winning Game 6 in Atlanta. I don't see them losing that game. It took like you said, it took the Bucks a perfect game. Brook Lopez playing magnificent basketball. Even Clint Capella didn't play. It took a magnificent masterclass out of Brook Lopez, along with other variables such as Onyeka Okongwu stepping into the starting lineup. All of that to lead to the Bucks' victory. So I'll take the Hawks winning Game 6. I expect Trae Young to be back, Clint Capella to be back, that pick and roll once again to destroy the Milwaukee interior defense without Giannis Antetokounmpo. And when Giannis does return, probably in Game 7, that's what the reports are saying right now, I just don't see him being as dominant as he is per usual. So I'll take the Hawks, although I could very easily see Milwaukee winning this series either way if they have a performance like they did last night. We do have a question in the comment section, and we'll get to that Western Conference series right now. Thoughts on the Chris Paul Game 6 masterclass? He dropped 41 points in Staples Center, his old stomping grounds. What were your thoughts from that game?
Chris Paul, a lot of people were saying, because obviously he didn't play the first 2 games, but when he played Game 3 and 4 and even Game 5, a lot of people were pretty upset with his play in those games. But in Game 6, he completely made up for it. 41 points, efficient shooting. He had 0 turnovers, I believe. And he was just creating points not only for himself, but for his entire team. And it was easily a masterclass. And Chris Paul finally in the NBA Finals and was able to lead the Suns there. In my opinion, Devin Booker is the best player, and his on-court impact is higher than Chris Paul's. But as a whole, I think Chris Paul is the leader of this team. And I'm not going to be one of those guys that say without Chris Paul, they wouldn't be anything. No, they're still a great team all around. But I think Chris Paul, he's done so much for this team. And for him to come on top, especially in the Staples Center against the Clippers in Game 6 to send them home, to advance to his first NBA Finals, scoring 41 points. It was just magnificent to see. And a legend like Chris Paul finally in the finals. Obviously, injuries have a part in them getting to the finals, and we'll talk about that later. But it's just great to see. And the Suns are an amazing team. So it was a Chris Paul masterclass, and I'm happy to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I could put it, one or two ways. I mean, Chris Paul, obviously, you have to give him credit where credit is due for the magnificent Game 6 performance. I mean, he was sensational in every possible way. I mean, when it comes to playmaking, when it comes to scoring the ball, I thought he shot 7 for 8 from 3, which is his best three-point shooting game since, I believe, 3 years ago against the Utah Jazz in the playoffs, where he also dropped 41 points in a closeout game. So, I mean, it's a little historical to say for Chris Paul. But, I mean, overall, I mean, this playoff run, I mean, I don't want to be that guy, but, I mean, I feel like I tweeted this out the other day, and it was Chris Paul has had better playoff runs than this. I don't really see – like, his team is winning because of the supporting cast. He has a better supporting cast. I mean, he's had the injury luck as well go his way this time, not against him. But, I mean, people say this is the run that puts him – as a top 5 point guard of all time. He's been a top 5 point guard of all time. And I don't think this run really changes anything at all. Even then, like, even if it did, this run hasn't even been that great from his perspective. He's had his great moments, but overall, it hasn't been one of his top tier runs. So he's been a top 5 point guard. I have him ranked at 4, but I mean, this run does not really change the grand scheme of things as many people think it would.
Yeah, I agree. And it's been an amazing run for Chris Paul, even though his production hasn't been elite. Obviously, in the Denver series, he was amazing.
Right.
And in Game 6, he was amazing as well. But as you said, it's not some historic run because it's a great team around him. And I do agree. He is a top 5 point guard of all time, and he's been that. It's just his playmaking, his talent, his peak as a defender. It all comes together, and I think he's definitely top 5. And the longevity as well is something to write home about. So even though it's not one of the better playoff runs of all time from an individual perspective, him getting the Suns to this point and being their leader, although it is an amazing team, it's just hats off to Chris Paul for that, and I'm really happy for him.
Yeah, I mean, although I love to joke about Chris Paul's leadership because it is one of the funniest things I see on Twitter. I mean, you see, like, Paul George crossed him up the other game, and it was like Paul George crossed him up because Chris Paul whispered in his ear the motivations of leadership, and that's why Chris Paul got crossed up. And it's just like, it's really funny. But at the same time, I mean, we both agree that Devin Booker is probably the best player on this team. But at the same time, the additions of Chris Paul, not even just a leadership perspective, just thinking what he brings on the court. I mean, his pick and roll game with DeAndre Ayton opens up so many opportunities, whether DeAndre Ayton, who's actually improved as a passer, used to be somewhat of a black hole. He's improved as a passer, so he just kicks it to DeAndre Ayton, who could put it up for the layup or the dunk, or he could kick it out to an open shooter. I mean, the mental improvements you've seen throughout everyone on this roster, and then additions like guys like Jay Crowder. I mean, this team is loaded from top to bottom. I mean, people would love to discredit their run at the end of the day. I know, like 3 years from now, people will say it's a Mickey Mouse ring. That's what they love to do. But at the end of the day, this team is extremely talented, and I would not have been surprised. Like, obviously, I picked the Lakers to beat them, but I had them as the second best team in the West, and I think they're proving me right.
Yeah, and the Suns this year, obviously people are going to bring up the Mickey Mouse thing because there were other teams in their way were injured. But you can't deny that this team, as of right now, they look like the best team in the NBA. Obviously, the Nets, they were unhealthy, so if they were healthy, they would probably be them. But the Suns look like the best team in the NBA just from a whole. They really have no flaws. And last year when the Heat made the finals, everyone was talking about the Heat culture, and to an extent that was overblown, but the Suns are proving again how big of a deal culture is in the league. A guy like Devin Booker and a guy like Chris Paul in that locker room, and then guys like Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, Jay Crowder, Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges. The list goes on. Guys buying into that culture, and Monty Williams as a coach. Culture could be overblown in some senses, especially last year with the Heat, but it's a major, major thing in basketball, in my opinion.
I mean, you also forgot one of the best six men in the NBA in Cam Payne. I mean, shout out Cam Payne. I mean, I'm a Thunder fan, if you guys don't know. And Cam Payne was literally not good at, like, he was not a quality NBA player when he was on the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then you see his progression. He used to be known as Russell Westbrook's dance partner to now. You saw that he went to China. He was abandoned from the league. Phoenix took a chance on him, and he became one of the best backup point guards in the league. He stepped up for Chris Paul in game 2, and he dropped 29 points. I mean, I can't say enough about Cam Payne's improvement. If there was, I know most improved player is a regular season award, but if there is a most improved player for the postseason, that has to be Cam Payne. It has to be Cam Payne.
Oh yeah, I agree. Cam Payne, I mean, you said it best. He was, to put it lightly, he was just bad in his first stint, and he was known as Westbrook's dance partner. But now people don't know him as that as much. He's known as one of the best six men in the league, a great backup point guard to have, a great facilitator, pretty much does everything you need from a backup point guard. So it's really great to see that as well, especially because I remember on the Bulls, one of their trainers or scouts said that he can't play at the NBA level at all. And at the time it was true, but now he's making them eat their words, and me included. So it's great to see that as well.
Right. And we'll keep it going from here. Obviously, we touched on both the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference. Let's talk about the injuries as a whole, because there has been a historic number of injuries. We just saw in the game prior to the last Eastern Conference playoff game, we saw that both Giannis and Clint Capella went down. Trae Young went down. Chris Paul was out with COVID for a couple games. And then you obviously have guys like LeBron, AD, Kyrie, James Harden, Kawhi. The list goes on. And I want to know, how much has injuries changed the outcome of these playoffs? Do you still see Phoenix or whoever in the East having as much success without injuries? Or do you think it's had a big role? And do you think this ring is, we touched on it earlier, but do you think this ring is tainted in comparison to other rings, or do you think it still holds the same value?
So obviously, I mean, we see every year there's some injuries that play a factor into a team losing. We saw, I'll bring up Chris Paul again in 2018. Chris Paul, he got injured when he was on the Rockets, and the Rockets lost in 7 games to the Warriors. And if he's there, they probably win the series because they missed 27 straight threes. With Chris Paul, he's probably there to open up some more three-point looks and score for his own. So they probably win that series if Chris Paul is there. But, I mean, injuries happen. It's a part of the game. It's just this year, it's just so much larger. I mean, all the players you named, and even guys that didn't miss too much time in this postseason. Donovan Mitchell missed game 1 of the Memphis series, but outside of that, he was still playing a little injured against the Clippers. Luka Doncic was playing a little injured against the Clippers in round 1 as well. It's so many guys. Like there's not many players that you could think of off the top of your head that are like top of the league that didn't get injured this postseason. Joel Embiid got injured as well. And it's really hard. I mean, I'm not going to say this Phoenix ring, if they get it, has an asterisk on it because, I mean, the competition they faced was still pretty great competition. We saw the Clippers without Kawhi Leonard. They were still a great team. The Lakers, they were still able to push it to 6 games. But I think this is tainted a little bit because we saw against the Lakers, Anthony Davis was hobbled all series for the most part. LeBron, he had his moments, but he wasn't the playoff LeBron we always see, mainly because of some injuries and also age catching up. But injuries were a part of that. So they won in 6 games, and I would probably take the Lakers to win if they were fully healthy. But even if that didn't happen, because Phoenix is still a great team, Phoenix moves on to the next round against Denver. And if they had Jamal Murray, I would probably take Denver to win that as well. If not, it's a much closer series than a sweep. But even if Phoenix wins that, which was definitely possible regardless, they have to go against the Clippers. And I was never a huge believer in the Clippers, but after what we saw from them this postseason, that resiliency, Tyronn Lue, Paul George stepping up, everyone stepping up. With Kawhi Leonard there, although some of the guys that stepped up would have to take a back seat, that's still Kawhi Leonard, a top 5 player in the league. So I think the Clippers would probably win that series. I would probably lean Suns in 7, actually, if Kawhi Leonard was there, but it's a closer series regardless. But the Suns, all their competition they've played, a major player has been injured every single time. And I'm not going to say that this is an asterisk ring, a Mickey Mouse ring, but it's hard because we don't see injuries like this a lot. Every year there's guys being injured left and right, but not to this extent. So I think it's a little bit tainted, but not too much.
Yeah, so, I mean, let's face it. If everyone was healthy, the Brooklyn Nets win the championship. That probably is the best case. I mean, it took the Bucks 7 games to beat the Brooklyn Nets with Harden at like 20% and KD going off. I mean, with Kyrie and Harden at 100%, I would expect the Nets to win that series as well as beat probably the Lakers out of the West or the Clippers. I mean, that's the facts at hand. Injuries have definitely changed the playoffs. But at the same time, there's people bringing a different outlook into this. Maybe we should give the Suns medical staff more credit than the other team's medical staffs, keeping these guys healthy, proper nutrition, proper exercises. I mean, a lot of things go into it. I mean, also the roster construction as well. We see teams like the Lakers and the Nets who are top-heavy, loaded with star talent at the top, but don't have elite amount of depth. The Suns lost Chris Paul for 2 games of the playoffs and won both games because they have great depth. I mean, there's a lot of things you can attribute to this. At the end of the day, I still think the ring holds value. It still counts. It probably doesn't, like, if you're comparing all-time title runs, let's say, like, obviously a ring is a ring. Chris Paul, if he gets a ring, it's a ring. It still holds the same merit as, let's say, Hakeem Olajuwon's 1994 ring. But if you're going to compare runs, obviously Hakeem's 1994 run will trump Chris Paul's 2021 run. So when you bring into comparison, if it's the same, if it's as impressive, probably not. But it still holds the same value. It's still a ring. It still counts. And I think people should learn that fact. I mean, if you're going to if you're going to blame injuries for everything, then you can go back to 2014 as the last real NBA championship. I mean, we look at 2020, Dragic and Bam are injured for the finals, and the Heat take them to 6 games. Obviously, we still probably take the Lakers to win that series, but who knows what could have happened. We look at 2019, KD and Clay are hurt. We look at 2018, Chris Paul gets hurt. 2017, Kawhi gets hurt. 2016, Curry and Bogut get hurt. And then the Draymond suspension. 2015, Kyrie and Kevin Love get hurt. I mean, we can go back multiple years and list out all the championships. But then, like Will said, luck is involved in nearly every single championship. And, like, we see dynastic teams like Golden State win it, and the Lakers, who are expected to win it, obviously win it. But even those teams have some luck going their side. So I think at the end of the day, it doesn't really change much.
Yeah, and it definitely counts as a whole. You have to play who's in front of you no matter what. I mean, obviously, it's not their fault that guys are going out left and right, but you have to play who's in front of you, so it still holds weight. It's just like, I think some titles hold more weight than others. As you said, Hakeem's 94 run, Dirk's 2011 run. It's hard to put this as a top-tier title of all time, because if everyone is healthy and the Suns win the championship, that's one of the best titles of all time, because the league is that stacked when healthy. It's just all those guys getting hurt, but it definitely still counts because you have to play who's in front of you, and it's not Phoenix's fault, or even Atlanta, even though they've had some Trae Young injuries and Clint Capella. If they make it and win it all, it's not their fault either. So you have to play who's in front of you, and luck is definitely involved every single year.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to keep it rolling from here. We're also going to get to some NBA draft topics, which we're going to get into right now. And one of the biggest topics, and before we get into this, make sure you go check out our guy Aiden Mayer's recent YouTube video on the TWSN YouTube channel. He breaks down who the Rockets should pick and why between Evan Mobley and Jalen Green, the number 2 and number 3 prospects, whichever way you have them ranked. But we're also going to discuss about it. So, Justin, I want to know, you've been vocal on Twitter by saying that you have Evan Mobley ranked ahead of Jalen Green. However, teams don't often pick best player available. They often go with fit as well. Which player do you think the Houston Rockets should select at number 2? Do you think it's going to be a bad pick if they don't select the player you think? And why would you pick that player?
So for who I think that they're going to pick, I think they'll pick Jalen Green because I think him and Kevin Porter Jr., I think they have a pretty close relationship. And plus, a lot of teams just base it off fit. And at times that could work, but at times it can't. We saw the Warriors pick James Wiseman over LaMelo Ball. And I'm still really high on James Wiseman. But picking him over LaMelo Ball is just not a good look whatsoever. Even though they didn't need a point guard, LaMelo Ball is still clearly a more talented player than Wiseman. And probably Wiseman will never come close to LaMelo Ball. So at times, picking for fit works, but at times it doesn't. And Jalen Green, he's number 3 on my big board. He's, in my opinion, the best scorer in the draft. I think his playmaking goes underrated, and once he gets into the league, his playmaking won't be great right away. But we see a lot of shooting guards develop their playmaking within a few years down the road, like Devin Booker, Zach LaVine, Bradley Beal, Donovan Mitchell, the list goes on. But I just think Evan Mobley is just so much better. Defensively, he's the best player in the draft by far. He's the best defensive player I've evaluated as a prospect. He has no flaws in his defense at all. And offensively, I do think there's some things he has to touch up upon. And I think Mobley, if he's aggressive as a scorer right away, that's going to be scary for the league. He's an amazing passer. And really, I don't see a way that Mobley doesn't fail in the league. I think his floor is an elite defender, if not like close to it. And maybe his offense won't pan out because I still have a little bit of questions, but his offense is still elite and it projects well for the next level. Within 3 to 4 years, I think he's going to be an offensive juggernaut in the league. And I think Cade Cunningham is definitely number 1, but Evan Mobley, he's a number 2. He's pretty locked in at that spot, and he's generational in his own right. So even though I think Jalen Green's going to be an amazing scorer, maybe a scoring champion down the line, it's hard to pass up on Evan Mobley. And even fit-wise, it's not a bad fit with Mobley on the Rockets because you could slide Christian Wood to the 4. We've seen that before. And both Mobley and Wood can play without the ball in their hands. Both of them are versatile offensively. Christian Wood's developing defensively. Evan Mobley's an elite defender. So it's really not a bad fit. And I like that fit more than Jalen Green on the Rockets because Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green both prioritize in scoring. Kevin Porter Jr. is a great playmaker as well. And I think Green will develop that too. But I think they kind of overlap. And Christian Wood and Evan Mobley, although I don't think it's a perfect fit, for a Twin Towers duo, I think it's a great fit. So I think it's easily Evan Mobley. And if they don't pick that, I don't think they're messing up because Jalen Green's that good. But I think it's easily Evan Mobley here.
Yeah, so I'm pretty certain, I am 98% sure that the Houston Rockets will be picking Jalen Green, number 2 overall, come July 29th. I mean, Jalen Green went on Instagram Live. I'm not sure you caught it the other day. And he basically said that him and Kevin Porter Jr. are going to be a scary backcourt. I mean, it's pretty much confirmed. And I like that backcourt. But at the same time, is that even the greatest fit? I mean, I think Evan Mobley's a more talented player. I think he's definitely the best defender in this class. When you talk about rim protection, when you talk about mobility on the perimeter, Evan Mobley really has it all. And then you talk about offense. I was watching some of his offensive film today, and a lot of the concerns everyone has is he's not aggressive enough as a scorer. And that's a good concern. That's a really good concern to have, especially for a guy who was a high-volume scorer at college. That's a good concern to have. People thought he was way too passive, but his playmaking out of the low post was so impressive. I mean, he draws 2 defenders, and then someone just cuts. I'm not going to say Jokic-like because obviously that's reaching, but it's really sensational. His passing, I'm really high on his playmaking ability. He draws two defenders in the post, someone just cuts, and he finds them cutting to the rim for an open layup. I mean, his gravity combined with his passing vision is just sensational, and I think he's definitely a better playmaker than Jalen Green. Jalen Green's an exceptional scorer. I think he's one of the best self-creators in this draft, but I would go with Evan Mobley. And the thing with the fit, which I was talking about earlier, is that Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green both are off guards. Both are two guys who are used to play at the shooting guard position. They're both great scorers, great at creating for themselves, but both haven't really shown the consistent flashes to be that primary playmaker within an offense. And I think with an Evan Mobley next to Christian Wood, you could space out the floor, have two rim protectors on offense, two guys who are really mobile, versatile defenders. I mean, I really don't see why you wouldn't take Evan Mobley. I think he's the best player on the board. He has the higher upside than Jalen Green. Also, he has the higher floor as well. I think he's going to be Serge Ibaka level right out of the gate. That's just a floor comparison. And then you also take into account the fit. I mean, I think the fit between Christian Wood and Evan Mobley is a much better fit than the fit between Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green, who do a lot of the same things like each other. So I would go with Evan Mobley. But the Rockets are going to get a good player either way. I know they're probably going to pick Green, and that's going to be a good player in the NBA.
Yeah, and Mobley's defense especially. I know we keep talking about how generational it is, but we see every single year you need an elite rim protector to win games. And Evan Mobley could easily be the best rim protector in the league in his prime. And he could even potentially be that sooner than that. He could be that within his third, fourth year in the league. He could be one of the best defenders we've ever seen. And he switches onto the perimeter as well. So I think his defense combined with his offense is it's just so, I don't know how you could do that on both sides of the ball and conserve your energy like that. And even though Jalen Green is an exceptional scorer and I think he'll be a great playmaker, I just don't think he's Evan Mobley. And the fit is worse with Green and Porter Jr. So I would definitely go Mobley.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the dilemma the Rockets have, especially with someone who knows about the Pierre Hooper or the tween has he splash community. We'll get into that later. But, I mean, I see the appeal of Jalen Green. I really do. And he is the number 3 prospect on my board for a reason. I mean, his shot creation ability, his shooting touch, he really does have it all. And he does remind someone of the more elite scorers, and that's a more flashier brand of basketball. But when you're talking about impact, what they bring overall, I think it has to be Evan Mobley, and that's why he ranks over Jalen Green on my board.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And Mobley, as you said, you think he's going to have a Serge Ibaka level floor, and I completely agree. I think from when he walks in the league, he'll be around the 9th best center in the league behind guys like Jokic, Embiid, Kat, Bam, Gobert, Capella, Aiden, and Vucevic. I think he'll be right there behind them. And it's just, he's going to be so great right away, even if he's not aggressive as a scorer, which, as you said, that's an amazing concern to have. So it's just, I don't think the Rockets are going to be regretting the pick of Jalen Green, but I think they would rather have Evan Mobley.
So it's 7:30 right now for me. You guys want to hear a take right now? I said that Cade Cunningham a couple weeks ago was a better basketball player than Ben Simmons. I said he would rank over him by the end of the season. He's probably already the better basketball player right now. Here's another take. Evan Mobley's already a better basketball player than Miles Turner. I know that's somewhat of a hot take, but when you talk about how great of a prospect this man is, I mean, he has it all. I think defensively right out of the gate, Miles Turner is a premier shot blocker, but Evan Mobley's rim protection and post defense, combined with the fact that he's more versatile, will really help his stock overall. And then offensively, I think Turner's offensive production is somewhat overrated. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit. But when it comes to spacing the floor, I think Mobley really does have potential in terms of being a floor spacer. His mid-range shot is really good. Maybe he could expand his range at the next level. And then you talk about finishing inside. Mobley's finishing is exceptional. Although he may be slim frame, don't let that fool you. He's one of the better finishers in college basketball this season. He's not afraid to attack the rim from the perimeter. I mean, this guy has it all. He really does have it all.
For me, it's tough to say that a college player is better than a player at the next level right away, like before they step in the league. And it's different if it's like a guy that doesn't really play, but a guy like Miles Turner and Ben Simmons, even though Simmons played horribly, it's hard to say that, but I agree. I think very, very quickly into their time in the league, Mobley will be better than Turner, and he'll be better than Simmons as well. And Cade Cunningham will be better than Simmons, and obviously Miles Turner as well. I think it won't take long for them to reach that. I think both could easily be all-star caliber players right when they step into the league. It's just hard for me to say that right away because it's not like they're just two bums at the end of the bench. They're two great players in this league. So it's hard for me to say that right away, but I think very, very soon into their careers they will be.
Yeah, I mean, and also, when do you project those two guys to be at the All-Star game? Do you think it's going to be rookie year possibly, or do you think it's going to be in their second year?
I don't think they'll make it their rookie year because a lot of the times the voters don't like that. The vote for rookies in the All-Star game. Like Luka could have been an All-Star his rookie year. Ben Simmons, people were saying he should have been an All-Star, but none of them made it their rookie year. It's just they like to reward the guys that are more experienced, the guys that have more of a reputation around the league. And I don't think they're going to be voted in unless they're leading their teams far. But they're definitely going to be All-Star caliber right away.
Right, and I mean, the last time we saw a rookie was Blake Griffin in 2010 making the All-Star game, and even then, he was injured for a year, so it wasn't like it was the Ben Simmons type of rookie year. But we'll keep it going. There's another intriguing prospect. I know Thomas pulls out his hair whenever he hears this name, and that's Jonathan Kuminga. I know Thomas is going to be spamming the chat right now. I know you had some thoughts on him, but the Orlando Magic do have the 5th pick and the 8th pick. Do you think they select Jonathan Kuminga at 5? And yes or no, and why would you go the direction that you went?
I think there is a chance that Kuminga could slip, but I think they'll definitely select him at 5. Is that the right decision? I'm not sure. I'll get to that in a second, but it seems as if he's definitely going to be in the top 5. And if not, I think he'll definitely go to the Thunder. But I mean, the Magic, they're in need of a small forward right now, and they could use some guard depth as well. And obviously, they don't really need front court depth right now. They have Wendell Carter Jr., Jonathan Isaac. They have Mo Bamba as well. They have a lot of front court pieces, so I don't see them going that route. I think they'll either go a guard or a small forward. And there is a guard that I think they should take, but I don't think realistically they will take him. But I am not as low as on Jonathan Kuminga as some others. I think right away he's not going to be good at all. And even his second year, he might not be good. But I really there's so many parallels to Jaylen Brown's development, just getting better every year. Kuminga has a lot of flaws right now, a lot. His shot making, his passing, his defense, his motor. There's so many questions about him, but the upside is there. He could easily be a star one day. But I think personally, Josh Giddey is the selection here. Josh Giddey is a guy that wasn't projected to be this high, and he's still not projected to be this high, but who really cares? The talent is clearly there. He's an elite passer. He's an elite playmaker as a whole. And offensively, I think he could step into the Magic and not be an elite playmaker or an elite player right away. But down the line, I could easily see him being definitely an elite playmaker and running their offense for them. And I think the Magic right now, Jonathan Isaac is still young. Wendell Carter is still young. But it's not like they're 20, 21 going into their second, third years. No, they're seasoned veterans at this point, not to the extent of like championship veterans, but they've been in the league for a while and they want to win games definitely. And I think you have to go best player available at this point. And Josh Giddey, I think he's definitely up there. And I know you have Markelle Fultz and Cole Anthony, but both of them injuries are a question. RJ Hampton can play at the 2 off the bench. So I would go Josh Giddey here. But another guy is Moses Moody. I'm really high on Moody. I've seen him. Some mock drafts have him around 12 or 13, which I don't understand. He's going to be an elite 3-and-D guard at the next level, and I love his shot creation. And I think all the upside is there for him to be great right away and just to keep progressing. And although I'm not as low on Kuminga as many others, I wouldn't go with a top 5 pick. I wouldn't pick him top 5 because he is one of the biggest question marks in the draft, if not the biggest question mark. So I would not go Kuminga at number 5. I think that's a reach at that point. But I know Pranav and Thomas will be mad at me saying this, but I think OKC should take him at 6. But that's a different conversation for a different day. I would take Josh Giddey and then Moses Moody.
I mean, in terms of what I think the Orlando Magic should do, I think they should stay far away from Jonathan Kuminga. What's the point? I mean, they have a logjam at power forward / center. They also have a logjam of point guards. I mean, it's time to start a fire sale in Orlando. Get rid of some of the young talent, bring in some more picks, and then really set a foundation. And I don't think Kuminga really fits at all. I mean, you have Jonathan Isaac, one of the best defenders in the league, coming back from injury. Well, Kuminga isn't that great of a defender for his size, and he's not that great offensively either. So I think him and Jonathan Isaac, that fit just doesn't work out. And I think that you honestly build around Jonathan Isaac, and then you have Wendell Carter Jr. and Mo Bamba. Both are projects at this point, and they haven't really shown much in their young career. I don't really think you want to take on another project. So I'm thinking along the same lines of you. Obviously, you have guys like Markelle Fultz, former #1 overall pick, Cole Anthony, RJ Hampton. So if Josh Giddey's on the board, you obviously take Josh Giddey, and I expect him to be on the board. However, Moses Moody seems like the best fit pick in this perspective. Josh Giddey's probably the better prospect. They're both neck and neck. But in terms of the best fit, it has to be Moses Moody because their position of need or their position that they have a hole in compared to all their other positions is the wing position. And Moses Moody can come in and be that wing scorer for them, that wing shot creator for them next to Fultz, Anthony, and Isaac in that offense. And I think that could really work out for them. So either way, Giddey or Moody can be a great pick. If you pick Giddey, you probably have to move on from one of your logjam of point guards in terms of either probably Cole Anthony or RJ Hampton, because I really do think Fultz has some potential next year. And he was really looking good towards the end of last year and his one game this year. But, I mean, I would probably pick Josh Giddey because take the best player available. But in terms of best fit, it has to be Moses Moody if you just want to keep building on from the foundation you already have.
Yeah, and I don't think Moody right away will be a premier shot creator or a premier scorer. I think he'll be good right away, and he's an NBA-ready prospect, but I don't think he's to the extent of Cade Cunningham and Evan Mobley and Jalen Green. And obviously, that's a lot to ask for, but right away he'll be great. And I think give him reps, he'll develop shot creation even more than he already has. And I think Orlando, as you said, it's the best fit pick, and it's probably, in my opinion, the best realistic landing spot for Moses Moody himself. So he could get those reps, so he could start right away at the 3, so he could create. And I think that would be great for both sides, but I would probably go with Josh Giddey here by a slight margin just because I think he's the best player available, and I would see how it works with Cole Anthony off the bench. I think RJ Hampton can play some 2-guard if they need, but I would probably move on from Cole Anthony pretty soon because I think Josh Giddey will definitely be better than him, even though Cole Anthony has shown some flashes. But it could be either Giddey or Moody. And Kuminga, I kind of understand the argument, but in my opinion, if they want Kuminga, either trade down or pick him at 8 if he falls there. So I think it should be Giddey or Moody.
Yeah, and we're going to keep it going here to our last and final topic of the day, and that is the reported trade rumor, which was the Golden State Warriors possibly trading James Wiseman in the 7th pick for an established star player. The most notable name is Pascal Siakam. Which team do you think would benefit from that trade more, and why? I'll start. I think it would be a highway robbery for Golden State. I think people are really starting to underrate what Pascal Siakam brings on the court. I mean, he did struggle at the start of last year, but he really did pick it up towards the end of the year last year. And let's talk about it. He's a very good defender. Next to Draymond Green, that would probably be one of the best defensive front courts in the NBA. And then offensively, listen, we know he's not the most efficient guy when he's the lone creator, when he's the primary option. But we saw in 2019, playing off of Kawhi and playing next to Kyle Lowry with better spacing, he was really productive, especially translating to the playoffs. And I think in Golden State, playing next to 2 of the greatest shooters in NBA history, combined with other guys who they'd probably pick 14, they'd probably pick a shooter, I think that could really be beneficial for Pascal Siakam. His offense will be better. He's a really good playmaker as well. And then you're comparing him to a guy like James Wiseman. James Wiseman is a complete negative on both ends, while Siakam is going to bring a clear positive. I think this is a no-brainer. What do you think from this trade? And do you think the Warriors should hit the trigger and trade James Wiseman immediately.
This trade, I like it so much for Golden State. I think the trade would have to be the 7th pick, Wiseman and Wiggins for money for Siakam and Chris Boucher. And obviously, as you said, Siakam, he's so underrated right now because no one's forgetting about that 2020 playoff run, especially in the second round. And Siakam and the Warriors, he fits perfectly. When he was with Kawhi Leonard and Kyle Lowry in 2019, he fits so perfectly in there because he wasn't having to take on the responsibility of a primary scorer or the primary offensive option on your team or the engine. He was just a secondary, third, complementary star player. And on the Golden State Warriors, he fits in perfectly in that role. When he's used off the ball, he's great as a screen setter. He's great as a cutter. He's a great finisher. He's solid off the catch and shoot. And I think they could run him at the 5 if they get him, and I think that's their best option because we've seen Golden State, they don't need a center. They have Curry, they have Clay, they have Draymond, Siakam at the 5. Draymond and Siakam as help defenders, that would be scary for teams trying to get to the rim against them. They're two of the best help defenders in the league. And the Warriors, although they're not, even if they get Siakam, they're not the Warriors that we knew before the dynasty, but that's still a great team. And Siakam at the center, that could work. And they could also have a guy like Jordan Poole play the 3 for more shooting and offensive versatility, or whoever they pick at 14. If that's a great shooter as well, they could slide him there. For Toronto, I think they lose the deal, but I still think it's a great deal because I'm still very high on Wiseman. I don't think he's going to be some transcendent player, some number 2 overall pick, but I think he could be a borderline all-star level player. And I think Toronto is perfect for him because their developmental team is so good at touching up upon players' weaknesses, and Wiseman right now has a lot of weaknesses. It's clear he's not pro-ready at all, especially coming off the injury. That's another thing to be worried about. And I think the Raptors, they could insert him at the center position right away. Maybe they'll bench him for Khem Birch right away because they want to get him reps off the bench before they just throw him into a starting role. But I think it's perfect for him to develop. And then the Warriors also get Chris Boucher, which is a perfect fit as a backup 4. And then Andrew Wiggins on the Raptors. They could either move him for something else or package him with one of their picks, or they could just keep him and hope to go on another playoff run. So I really like this trade for both sides. I think the Warriors get the better end of the deal, but I don't think the Raptors get a bad return at all for Siakam here. You're muted.
My bad. But for sure, I mean, I think the Warriors obviously highway robbed this trade. But at the same time, when you're looking, like, I don't think Masai Ujiri is going to accept this trade at all. I really don't. I think the report or the proposed package is kind of bogus to me because Masai Ujiri, he as a talent evaluator, he knows that James Wiseman is not going to replicate what Pascal Siakam brings, and he also knows that he can get more value back. So he's probably going to request both lottery picks and Wiseman for Siakam. I just see him getting much more value. So if that's the case, what I expect from Masai Ujiri, I think it's a good trade for both teams. Obviously, Siakam is the best player in the deal, and the Warriors win the trade. But at the same time, for a Raptors team that's going to move forward with their build around young guys, they have the number 4 pick. I think this could really be helpful, especially when you have 3 lottery picks in that proposed package. You could trade up for a guy like an Evan Mobley or a Jalen Green possibly with the Cavs. So it's possible. There's a multitude of different outcomes, but I really like the possibilities this trade has to offer for both sides.
Yeah, and I really do think, as I said before, this Warriors team with Siakam, they're not the Kevin Durant Warriors that we saw for that stint, but they're still a title-level team with Siakam. You could run Curry, Clay, Poole, Draymond, Siakam, an amazing defensive front court. You have great shooting with the 1 through 3. And then, although the bench, it's still a little lackluster, I think with Chris Boucher as the back 4 as well, that's great. You could also sign some free agents, some guys on minimum deals.
Keep JTA.
Oh, Juan Toscano-Anderson, too. That would be perfect off the bench. That's a great 7-man rotation. And then sign some other guys off the bench. Not Kent Bazemore, but sign some other guys. And then they'll have Kevon Looney as well, which might be a little tough to run him there because of some spacing issues in the front court. But that's a solid 8-man group. And although the West is so much tougher now than it was in the past with the Lakers, if they're healthy, the Clippers, assuming they get Kawhi Leonard back, which is probably very likely at this point. And then obviously the Suns and then the Nuggets when they get Jamal Murray back, and even the Jazz. It's going to be tough for the Warriors to win a title, but that's a title-level team, and they could very easily win their 4th title in this era if they got Siakam.
Yeah, for sure. And if you don't have anything to add to that, I know I don't. But if you don't have anything to add to that, thank you guys for tuning in. This was a great final episode for me. I'll miss being on this show, but you can still catch me on the TWSN show every Tuesday. And make sure to still support Justin, Will, Nader, and the guys on the On the Ball show every Friday here at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. But with that being said, see you guys next time. I mean, there's really not a next time for me, but I'll be around. I'll be around. So catch you guys on the flippity flip, like Michael Scott would say.
Is this the dagger?